Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything. Geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Porkins Policy Radio. As always, I am your host, Pierce Redmond, and you can find this show here at American Freedom Radio, AmericanFreedomRadio.com, as well as on a host of other internet radio stations. And of course, you can find everything I do, the radio show, podcasts, interviews, everything under the sun at my website, which is PorkinsPolicyReview.com. Well, I am very excited about today's show. We are continuing in our little mini-series on the anniversary of the OJ Simpson trial ending. For anybody that didn't know, yesterday, October 3rd, Monday, that was the 21st anniversary of OJ Simpson being acquitted of the murder of Ronald Goldman and Nicole Brown Simpson. And we had a really great response on the last episode, where we spoke with our good friend Steven Singular, mainly focusing on the social, cultural impact of the case. I got some comments, people saying that we didn't get into things enough. And, just to reiterate again for anyone that doesn't know, I've done 3 very in-depth interviews with Steven talking about all of the sort of specifics and complexities of the case and a lot more analysis in terms of, EDTA, the blue evidence bag, the stick, Mark Fuhrman, all of the intricacies. So go back and check those out if you are interested in diving a little bit more into that. But today I really wanted to kind of explore some theories as to who may actually be responsible. I wanted to pick up on a couple of the main theory that I hold a lot of credence to, and also kind of explore some of the false narratives and the more sort of out there theories that are sort of put forth, because I think that's the other sort of once you kind of figure out, well, OJ didn't do it, then you have to figure out, well, who did. And joining me to discuss this are 2 return guests. Of course, Ed Opperman of the Opperman Report joins us again, and we are also joined by Brian Heiss, who appeared on, I want to say it was the 3rd episode that we did for AFR, talking about his excellent film dealing with Mark Fuhrman. So, Ed and Brian, how are you guys?
I'm good, Pierce. How are you?
Pierce, it's great to be here. Hey, Ed, how are you? I don't understand why we're here when those 2 bastions of truth-telling journalism that the American people all trust, ESPN and FX, have already told us what happened.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that because I found it really interesting, before we kind of dive into this, that there was like almost no media coverage at all of the fact that this was the 21st anniversary.
I only learned that this morning when our friend Steven Singular told me.
Yeah. No, I mean, I assume that part of that is like the election. That is just sort of sucking the energy out of everybody. And we have the vice presidential debate tonight, which should really be riveting. But it also seems that so much of the coverage of this was sort of earlier in the year when the FX show was coming out, when there was suddenly, at least when the FX show came out, like every week or so there was they found the knife.
New evidence.
Yeah.
Knife. They've OJ did, and none of it was true.
Yeah, and again, it seems like that the beginning of the year was very much about programming basically people to accept the official story, no matter how ludicrous it may be, and then to also again accept these ridiculous claims of new evidence, and I guess just so that people wouldn't even know the significance of October 3rd. That it would just sort of become nothing. It would just sort of become another, it would not even like a date to remember. It would just sort of fade into the background. Now it's like we're done with OJ. There's nothing to see here. Move on.
We've already given out the Emmy Awards.
Yeah, I know, right? Exactly. So yeah, I mean, I was really surprised that there wasn't even, at least not even the sort of clickbait that we see. The new evidence type things popping up.
Kim Kardashian was apparently accosted yesterday, and that took everything off the news front. So.
Yeah, no, and of course the Kardashians intimately involved with OJ. Ed, I don't know, did you see anything?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, first of all, I didn't even know that it was the anniversary until a couple of seconds ago when you mentioned it.
Ed, I sent you a card.
Did you really? Well, I gotta go check the mailbox. But I didn't notice. I did notice something new. Someone sent me a video that I had never seen before. That's kind of timely. It's an interview with OJ, and it looks like something he did himself, where he talks about an encounter he had with Bill Clinton.
When they went golfing on March 29th, 1994.
No, different one. Where Bill, he was golfing. The golf course comes into play. Yeah. OJ was golfing, and he got a call on his cell phone from Bill Clinton, and Bill was asking him about what about Anna Nicole Smith?
Yeah.
Hey, right. What do you think of that Anna Nicole Smith? And OJ tells him, well, she's big as a house. And Clinton was all disappointed by this. He goes, oh, that's a shame. So, but I had never seen that before, but I guess it just popped back up into circulation.
Interesting. I hadn't seen that, but I've heard that quote. I've heard him tell that story before.
There's actually a video of it. There's YouTube of it.
Very cool. They keep that photo of Bill Clinton and OJ playing golf hidden from history.
Yeah.
That was hard to find.
Yeah. So Brian, you actually came up with that picture. How'd you come up with that?
Google. One of the good things that Google does is they have a news archive search. A few years ago, they were doing they were scanning in old newspapers, and one newspaper in Florida published the picture in like 1996 or 97, and I caught it and I enhanced it, and I've never been able to find another copy of it.
Okay, and what was the date of that golf game between OJ and Bill?
March 29th, 1994.
Okay, March, and then the murders were in October.
June 12th.
March, April, May, June. Okay, that's interesting because I had always thought that it was a couple of weeks before the murders.
It had been reported that way, inaccurately reported that way a few times. I've seen it stated as a couple weeks before, but it was March 29th.
Yeah, I'm probably the one that started that. But because it always just, I don't know, man. It has always stuck in my head that Bill would have mentioned Pelicano to OJ, and that's how Pelicano inserted himself into this case, and that's how OJ came into contact with Pelicano.
Anthony Pelicano, the private investigator who represented the Clintons and also represented Mark Fuhrman.
That's right. Very unusual character who's in prison right now for possessing C4 explosives and having thousands of hours of wiretap conversations. He actually had his own little device patented where he could sit in his office and remotely wiretap any phone number he wanted across the country. Very unusual equipment for a private investigator to have.
I'm surprised he didn't get a cut on his sentence for showing the NSA how to do the same thing.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I don't know if he's going to be getting any cut, but I did hear too that he's negotiating sales of those tapes now. That his whole attitude has changed. He went into prison saying, "Okay, I'm a hard guy. I'm not going to rat anybody out." But now he's offering those tapes for sale. He's trying to negotiate a deal.
Has he found Jesus?
I don't know about that.
Well, I thought he had. Maybe I misread that.
Did he found Jesus?
Oh, something like that, but who knows? I mean, you never know these sort of weird rumors and stuff like that.
It's usually part of the prison rehabilitation program. When you get out and you're a public figure, you've found Jesus while you're in prison.
It's one of those rumors you hear hanging around the confessional.
So I wanted to ask, can we just all agree that, spoiler alert, we know who did it. It was Burke Ramsey. Mm-hmm. Burke Ramsey, of course, is John Benet Ramsey's older brother, who there's this man called Jim Clemente who hosts a podcast. He used to be an FBI agent, which is scary considering how much he gets wrong. I recently heard a podcast with Jim Clemente who stated emphatically that O.J. Simpson and his son Jason just coincidentally showed up at 875 South Bundy, Nicole's house on June 12th. And, they said, hey, you know what? Let's do the murders. This man who was an FBI profiler actually said that.
I think also Jim Clemente is also the guy who in the, a few days after the Boston bombing, he was the one that went on Aaron Burnett's show on CNN and, announced to the world that, the government has the ability to go back in time and listen to any phone conversation. And that they're recording everything, so that they definitely had the recordings of whatever the Tsarnaev, I think it was Tamerlan, was talking about with his girlfriend or his wife at the time. That there was that whole hubbub. I'm pretty sure that was Jim Clemente who actually revealed that information, which is, startling admission.
Well, also I don't know if it's Jim Clemente or Forrest Gump. But Clemente also shows up in the Vince Foster hearings and investigation too. Mm-hmm. And there's a really interesting cover sheet that's in the Vince Foster paperwork there in the archives talking about child abduction. And no one seems to understand. I talked to everybody in that thing. No one seems to understand how that's in there or what it has to do or what's going on. But it's in there, and Jim Clemente's name is on it.
Mm. Well, again, that just sort of illustrates the scope and the power of this case and this trial. All of these very high-profile people sort of floating around, either directly involved or on the sort of periphery. But getting back to because I guess we were just sort of talking about did Pelicano find Jesus or not or blah 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 blah. And there's a lot of these sort of like false narratives that we see over and over again with OJ. And I'm seeing, it's funny, I think while everyone is sort of the official story has been solidified for a lot of people, and I don't know what it is, but I've just had a lot of friends recently telling me, popping off all of these little facts and stuff based on the ESPN documentary. Mm. And so many of them are completely ridiculous. But let's just quickly dismiss this idea that it was OJ's son. That it was Jason that killed Nicole and Ronald. The storyline behind that, and I've mentioned this I think once before in an episode, is that he was so angry that Nicole didn't want to go to have dinner at his restaurant that he decided to then go and brutally murder her and Ronald Goldman while his step brothers and sisters were in the house. It's again just the exact same like crazy.
Do we know what the restaurant's policy was on cancellations? Because
Well, no. I mean, apparently it was just even if you read those like depositions that he gives in the civil trial, he's like, yeah, it was sort of like you get the idea that it was sort of up in the air.
A lot of the Jason Simpson. What do I call it? That's safe to say on the radio. Poppycock. Is based on the fact that on his way back from Chicago, when OJ was in Chicago coming back, police asked him to come back after Nicole had been killed. OJ hired for Jason and Arnell the best death penalty attorney in the state of California.
Who was that?
I knew you were going to ask that. I drew a blank on the name. I pulled it up.
Well, it's interesting about Arnell because he did leave work early that night, and he did bring home a set of chef's knives with him when he left. And also, too, he has a history of domestic violence with his other girlfriends. Mm-hmm. So, but who knows?
Oh, it's definitely there, yeah.
To answer your question, Carl Jones was the attorney that OJ hired before he even hired an attorney for himself. And I think that a lot of that fuels the speculation that he was somehow involved.
Yeah, I'd never heard that before.
No, I think, I guess for me though, it's always a matter of it's just a deflection from all of the other bizarre, because it's like, well, if it was Jason, then who cares about cocaine trafficking? Who cares that Michael Nigg was murdered, Brett Cantor is murdered, Chikarsky in Florida is murdered, a friend of OJ's is murdered a few months before the murders. Like, then all of those things are sort of irrelevant because, really, it was the crazy black son of OJ, who was, I don't know, so angry with Nicole.
He allegedly wasn't taking his medication, which was Depakote, and which is a SSRI, and it was going to be the first night that the whole family came to the restaurant that Jason was working. It was a Sunday night, and as a sous chef, the real chef isn't there on Sunday night, so the sous chef becomes the chef. He had allegedly arranged this whole elaborate menu for them. He was really looking forward to show off, how he can cook for the family, and they didn't show up. It broke his heart, and so he decided to lop his stepmother's head off.
Yeah, I mean, it just, again, it goes to the stereotypical image of the violent, crazy black guy. Mm-hmm. He can't handle rejection from his beautiful stepmother. So he decides to almost decapitate her and Ronald Goldman while his stepbrothers and sisters are sleeping upstairs. And again, too, I mean, it still raises the questions of how did he, what did he do with the knives? Mm-hmm. Had he cleaned up all the blood? A million other questions.
Absolutely.
And I guess, no, go ahead, Brad.
Sadly, a lot of this is only going to be fueled further because it's either investigation discovery, or one of the Discovery networks just picked up a series based on the Bill Deere book, Bill Deere is the guy who purports this theory, produced by Martin Sheen and it's going to be a People versus OJ Simpson like series based on the fact that Jason did it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just again, too. I mean, it just sort of raises all the questions of again, if this was all, but if Mark Fuhrman was doing this as a racist, why would he care if it was OJ or Jason? Why even frame OJ? I mean, it's still all the evidence pointing toward framing him.
Furman wasn't really that good Furman really wasn't that skilled of a detective. The man thought that the two victims were shot, and if you read his notes from the crime scene, so, he probably went to the first conclusion, OJ. I don't even know if he knew that OJ had a son.
Well, but OJ does, Furman does have motive, to pin OJ because.
Absolutely.
Many people believe he was dating Nicole. They definitely had some kind of relationship. He knew Nicole before all this. And,
you're absolutely right that he did know Nicole before this. I've not been able to find it. I've heard the rumor, of course, that they've dated. I've talked to people that have said, they think that there was more of a relationship for them. What I've been able to document is that in 1992, shortly after Nicole moved to the Gretna greenhouse after the divorce, she was receiving all these harassing phone calls, very inappropriate harassing phone calls, and she started to get scared about it. She got scared about it to the point that she was asking OJ to keep an eye on the house, keep an eye out for her. And it got to the point that she called the police and she filed a police report. And the detectives that responded and were in charge of the case were Mark Fuhrman and Brad Roberts. Fuhrman never testified to this in court. He said that his only experience with Nicole was in 1987, 85, when he showed up at the Rockingham estate for a domestic abuse incident. But I've been able to establish absolutely that Fuhrman was the detective who handled the harassing phone calls that Nicole was receiving. And by the way, the harassing phone calls were not made by OJ or anyone associated with him, and they actually caught the guy.
Oh, really? That I didn't know.
Yeah.
Now, these are the sort of racist neo-Nazi phone calls, right?
I don't know.
Okay, because I know that was, that there's a whole story there where, and again, that's confirmed. Kaylin, it's testified to this, that yes, Nicole and OJ both told him separately about phone calls. Other, friends, with, in their circle of friends, they all knew about this. Nicole even called OJ because she was so worried about these threatening racist phone calls. So
OJ even mentions it in the police interrogation. He mentions that she's been receiving harassing phone calls.
Right. Well, and at the same time, he also mentions that he was run off the road by some crazy guys in a car.
By Asians in a car, yes.
Right. That's Asians, yeah. I haven't read the week before, that's right. But I have a chat conversation from someone who I know knows Fuhrman, who told me that she believes that they actually dated. Okay, she believes that Fuhrman and Nicole were dating, but definitely that Fuhrman saw her before and after boobs, her boob job before and after, naked. Now, how do you know that?
That's documented by the boob job is documented by the assistant DA,
Lucian Coleman.
Yes, Lucian Coleman, who on the record talks about an officer telling her that at a police picnic, Fuhrman was bragging that he had seen Nicole's boob job and it looked great.
Okay, good. Okay, then this is a totally different source. And also, too, T.H. Johnson talks about this, too, that Nicole and her friend used to sunbathe topless. I think it was at a tennis club or some kind of pool or something. And that Goldman used to go there, too, because Goldman supposedly was a low-level drug dealer and selling nickel bags and stuff like that.
I know that Nicole sunbathed topless at her home at Gretna Green because it's written about in Mark Elliott's Cato Kalin book how she stopped doing after she and Kalin became friends. She stopped doing it because it made Kalin uncomfortable that she was, boobs out.
Well, and I guess this sort of also goes again towards one of these narratives that are sort of contradicted by the facts. And this isn't to speak ill of the dead, and obviously I think it's really easy for a lot of people to say, oh, well, Goldman and Nicole were, if you're on the side of OJ didn't do it, then they're somehow evil. But Nicole did have something of a reputation for having multiple lovers.
Sure.
So it's totally within the realm of possibility that she could have been sleeping with Fuhrman, the same way that she was probably sleeping with Marcus Allen.
That's documented in testimony. The only person that denies that he was sleeping with Nicole is Marcus Allen. Everyone else, there is enough corroborating evidence to suggest that they were, in fact, had a long period of sexual relations. And interestingly enough, did you know that on the day of June 12th, during the day, that Al Cowlings and Marcus Allen were out shopping for cars together?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, and I think also Marcus Allen also had a white Bronco, as did Al Cowling.
Do you know, I've never been able to find that documented, that Marcus Allen had a white Bronco.
I know it's mentioned in Killing Time, and I assume that they were able to somehow get that down. Because there's a whole section of Killing Time where they're talking about, and this is by Donald Freed and Raymond P. Briggs, and I'm trying to get Briggs on the show, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. But they talk about the fact that you'd three black guys all driving around in white Broncos.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me because Marcus tended to emulate everything that OJ did, so that would just make sense.
Well, and then go ahead.
Yeah, OJ had some kind of deal with the dealership for those Broncos, maybe through Avis or something like that, or Hertz, whatever it was.
OJ's Bronco came through Hertz. It was owned by Hertz. It was essentially leased to him.
Okay, well, there you go. And his stepfather, Nicole's father, owned a Hertz franchise.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, so that's I think he had a deal through Hertz that he was getting these Broncos for everybody.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Well, and Al Cowlings definitely got the Bronco to emulate OJ, forever living in his shadow.
Hey,
I know.
Did you know that Cowlings and OJ were dating the same girl all throughout high school and college? They used to pass the same girl back and forth. OJ's first wife.
Yeah, that girl was Marguerite Whitley Simpson. Whitley.
Yeah, right. They were both going out with her.
Well, OJ apparently stole Marguerite from AC, but I think that your scenario makes a lot more sense, Ed, to tell you the truth.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, again, just further illustrating, this is a nasty group of people. None of these people are nice.
A single woman having multiple sexual partners, there's really nothing wrong with that. There are other things that, more morally people might have a problem with it, but, she's not doing anything to break her sanctity of her vows or anything, so... I give her a pass on that.
No. I mean, I don't mean on that level. I'm saying just the idea that, OJ and AC might have just been kind of, whatever with, or they're very callous nature towards a lot of these. I mean, then you get the prostitute with 14 pounds of coke in her bag.
Oh, yes.
And Al Cowling's phone number and Al Cowling's back medication and OJ's phone number and Joey Ippolito's phone number. I mean, these are Steven Singular mentioned that in our last conversation.
You're talking about Tracy Alice Hill. Alice Hill, who was a stripper who was arrested on cocaine charges in February of 1995. She was found carrying a prescription of violet prescription drugs bearing the name of Al Cowlings. And in her purse, she had phone numbers and addresses of Simpson and Cowlings. And she was convicted. And it was nearly 40 pounds of cocaine.
And her lawyer was former law partners with Weitzman, who was OJ's first lawyer.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let me ask you a question, too. And I recall around the time of this going on, seeing Jim Brown, the football player.
The I Feel Good one or the Cleveland Browns?
No, the football player. Saying they had a little quick interview with him, and he says, well, everybody knows that OJ was heavily into coke. Now, have you guys ever seen that clip before? I haven't been able to.
I've never seen it.
Yeah,
I've heard it. I've heard of it.
Yeah, I remember it. And I haven't been able to find it, or any repeat of it, or a quote of it even.
Well, a lot of those sort of quotes have been airbrushed out, or people claim that they never made them, or that they're taken out of context. Well, I guess we're throwing a lot of stuff out there, but I thought a lot of what we are talking about right now, this sort of seedier underbelly of Brentwood, some of the more unsavory characters and whatnot floating around, as I've mentioned over and over, and I think why the Jason Simpson thing is irrelevant is, again, the coke trafficking, Joey Ippolito connection. And Brian, you recently sent me some really interesting stuff that was sort of talking about Ippolito, and specifically the Bronco chase. Yeah,
there's a story that I could tell that not a lot of people know, and it brings together everything that we've talked about so far. And the LAPD, a lot of this information comes from Chris Darden's book, of all places, and then additional research that I've done to kind of build the story through various facts. It's kind of a long story, but it's a good story. So the LAPD had compiled a list of about 500 clues which represented the information deemed most credible from the hundreds of phone calls LAPD had received from people purporting to have information about the murders. I want to tell you about Clue 298, which piqued the curiosity of Chris Darden. Clue 298 was a June 18, 1994 telephone message from a woman in Florida named Beth Reed. Beth and her husband had their boat anchored off Man-O-War Cay in the Bahamas on June 17th and 18th. At the same time, a large yacht called the Miss Turnberry was anchored near the Reeds. On June 17th, the day of the Bronco chase, the Reeds were at Albury's Harbor Store, a 25-foot by 25-foot grocery store that mainly supplied boaters who were coming in on their dinghy to get supplies for their ship. As they were shopping, the Reeds overheard a clerk say that the captain and the maid on the Miss Turnberry were expecting OJ Simpson to show up on the boat that day. On June 18th, two of the crew members from the Miss Turnberry took a dinghy over to the Reeds boat to present them with a crate of fruit and vegetables. The crew members said that their expected guests had not arrived and they didn't want the food to go bad. Christopher Darden, who in mid-June 1994 was leading the grand jury investigation into potential Bronco chase-related charges against Al Cowlings, was intrigued by the Reed story and asked LAPD Robbery Homicide Division for access to O.J. Simpson and Al Cowlings' personal telephone books and day planners that were in evidence. Sure enough, in O.J. Simpson's address book, there was a business card for Turnberry Associates with a Florida address and a name, Don Soffer. Don Soffer is a billionaire real estate developer and close friend of O.J. Simpson's. In fact, when Don Soffer married a former Miss Universe, O.J. Simpson was his best man. O.J. gives a shout-out to Don Soffer in his suicide note that Robert Kardashian read in that bizarre June 17, 1994 press conference. People may know Don Soffer for his connection to another infamous incident. Don Soffer was the owner of a yacht called Monkey Business. In 1998, photographs were published of the widely perceived as frontrunner for the Democratic nomination for the presidency in 1988, Senator Gary Hart kissing a woman named Donna Rice. The photographs of Hart and Rice were taken on Donald Soffer's yacht, Monkey Business. As Darden was investigating the tip from the Reeds, Patty Jo Fairbanks in the district attorney's office received an anonymous phone call from a local news producer who told Patty Jo about a woman who had taped conversations with Al Cowlings. The reporter claims that Cowlings had told this woman that the Bronco's destination on June 17th was not Nicole's gravesite, it was Mexico. It was only after they realized that slipping across the border would be impossible that they concocted the story about Nicole's grave. The tipster identified the woman as Jennifer Peace, who acts in pornographic films under the name Devon Shire. You might remember her from the 1991 classic film Jail Babes 2, Bustin' Out, or 1994's feel-good movie of the year, Dirty Doc's Butt Bangers Volume 3. Chris Darden interviewed Jennifer with LAPD detectives. She was somewhat cooperative. In her address book, Darden found AC's correct phone number and address. Jennifer told the Cowlings grand jury that she and Cowlings had been set up on a blind date by Ron Jeremy in 1994. The two clicked and went out several times. Jennifer told the grand jury that shortly after the murders of Nicole and Ron, she and AC met at a hotel. She said that AC was very upset and crying. She testified that Cowlings told her that he and OJ were trying to get out of the country before things got too thick and heavy. AC told her that their destination was Mexico, but their final destination was the Bahamas. With Jennifer Peace's testimony and the Reed story, LAPD and the DA's office determined that this merited further investigation and sent Chris Darden and detectives Arcee and Stevens to the Bahamas and Miami. Darden and the detectives were able to verify with the clerk and the owner of Albury's Harbor store that the conversation that the Reeds overheard while in the store had occurred prior to the Bronco chase. The conversation occurred on the morning of June 17th, which is important because the famous announcement that OJ Simpson is a fugitive of justice had not yet occurred. So neither the crew of the Miss Turnberry or the Reeds knew that OJ was on the run. Darden verified that Don Soffer was the owner of the Miss Turnberry, and the boat was in fact anchored off Man o' War Cay in the Bahamas on June 17th and 18th. Their investigation also determined that in April 1994, OJ and Nicole had been Soffer's guests on the Miss Turnberry. In his book, Darden writes, "The rumor had been all over the island that Simpson was coming, but evidence was flimsy. This was more than a coincidence. We come all the way across the hemisphere, and damn near everything checks out. This is no coincidence." Donald Soffer built and controlled Florida's Turnberry Isle Resort and Marina. Former Los Angeles restaurateur, speedboat racer, convicted cocaine trafficker, drug smuggler, and the man Al Cowlings credits for getting him off crack, Joey Ippolito, is directly connected to Don Soffer and Florida's Turnberry Isle Resort and Marina. According to the New York State Commission of Investigation, Joey Ippolito is an associate of the Lucchese crime family. Joey Ippolito's connection to Soffer and the marina is he docked his cigarette boats at the Turnberry Isle Resort and Marina, the same cigarette boats he used to smuggle illegal drugs into the United States. There's more to the relationship between the convicted cocaine trafficker and Cowlings than Joey convincing Al to just say no. While many have said that AC was Ippolito's bodyguard or driver, I've only been able to document that Cowlings was a close associate of Ippolito and was employed by a restaurant that Ippolito owned in Santa Monica. By the way, according to the FBI and federal prosecutors, the restaurant served as the front for cocaine trafficking. Also, Cowlings and Ippolito shared the same lawyer, Donald Ray. Let's consider this. If Ippolito's organization was responsible for the killings, is it possible, in order to guarantee OJ's silence and prevent him from bringing down the entire house of cards, that they might use leverage to get OJ to agree to let them secure his safe passage to a nation that won't extradite to the United States and set him up financially? Now, what could that leverage be? I've always found it curious that when OJ was caught, he had a set of keys on him. Keys not to his house, not to his car, but to Nicole Brown Simpson's gate. the same keys that Cora Fishman testified were stolen from Nicole's house. Nicole and Cora used to go running every day, and instead of carrying the keys with them and having them jiggling around while they were running, she used to put the keys under this potted plant out in front of the gate. So when they got back, they just lift up the plant, grab the keys, go in. Those keys were missing. They were on OJ when he was caught on June 17th. Why would he have the keys to his ex-wife's condo, the gate at his ex-wife's condo, with him? Even if you had nothing to do with the murders, wouldn't that be what you wanted to make disappear? You could flush it down the toilet in Chicago. There are a number of ways you could get rid of those keys. Why were they with him? Might it have been that was the leverage, that was the evidence leverage that they used against him to somehow convince him to flee the country, and then he might possibly have been able to convince Cowlings that, I'm going to go through with it, I'm not going to rat anyone out, and they made a deal in the car to go back and face the music instead of fleeing? I don't know, but there's a lot of information that seems to point that way.
A lot there. And I'll say that when you brought this up to me, Brian, I said that I always believed that OJ was trying to flee. I never bought this, he was depressed, and I mean, I don't even know if there's really any actual evidence of any, that he went to the gravesite. I know that's in the FX show. They make a big point of showing that, and again, so that image is ingrained in people's minds. But I don't know if there's anybody witnessed them, if anybody saw them, if there's any, or if that's just sort of the story that they went with. But yeah, I always assumed that he returns from Chicago, right? Mm-hmm. He finds out about this horrible murder. Obviously
but doesn't know how they're killed yet. He doesn't know the manner.
Right, doesn't know how they're killed. But I mean, he's smart enough to know what was going. I mean, he knew what was going on.
Yeah.
Everybody. I mean, it wasn't just OJ that wanted to flee. Faye Resnick was pleading with Nicole to flee the country. They said they had to get away. And Resnick's ex-husband,
as did Cora Fishman. Interestingly enough, that you mentioned Faye. Cora Fishman was urging OJ to move him and the family to Florida. Nicole, and the family to Florida.
Right, and what's Resnick's ex-husband, Christian Reichert? He wanted to take Resnick to Idaho to get her out of the everybody was trying to get out of Brentwood.
Well, after the murders happened, it's interesting if you look at especially Christian Reichert's deposition of the civil trial. Christian talks about the initial reactions of various people, various public figures involved in the case. The Kardashian-Jenner clan, Faye's first husband, Paul Resnick, he and everyone else loosely associated with the case all believed that it had something to do with drugs and it was a drug hit. And as you mentioned, Paul Resnick, Faye's ex-husband, wanted to move Faye from a secure drug rehabilitation facility to his compound in Idaho to keep her safe. And the Jenners and the Kardashians also believed that this had to do with drugs, and they were worried as well.
Yeah, and again, too, Faye Resnick is spending several thousands of dollars a day freebasing coke. This is...
Well, have you ever heard
that's going to make anyone paranoid.
The January 1994 car accident that Nicole and Faye were involved in at about 3 a.m?
I only vaguely know that it happened.
So Nicole and Faye are driving home from the club, and they hit a BMW.
Yeah.
Nicole's behind the wheel. Nicole and Faye had been freebasing coke while they were driving, and Nicole was terrified that she was going to be arrested and go to jail, and Faye took the hit, and she got into the driver's seat and put Nicole in the passenger seat, so it appeared that Faye was driving.
No, friends till the end, right?
But do you know how cracked out you have to be freebasing coke while you're driving?
Well, I mean, that's the thing too, is that everybody knew that this was first, right, again, you're spending this much alone just consuming drugs yourself. You're going to get into a position where you're going to start owing people money. and it seems very, very timely that Faye Resnick is in rehab, calling Nicole the night of the murders, only a few hours beforehand, allegedly arguing on the phone. And just to backtrack again to the Bronco chase, yeah, I think OJ returns, having known all of this stuff that's going on, finds out his wife is killed, finds out Goldman is killed, had to know there's something with him, then voluntarily gives the police his blood, thinking, well, this will clear me. And then, however many hours later, he's the number one suspect. So yeah, I think that he did get in that car. I think the Bronco chase was real. I think Darden thought it was real enough.
Absolutely. And that's what intrigued me about that story that I just told, that Darden thought it was real enough. And then I started looking at it myself and looking at the different connections, and everything that I mentioned in that story is, I have citations for everything. It's not some, I read on some blog somewhere. It's actual sources, most of it testimony. And although I can make a strong case for why he was suicidal too, and why he was going to her grave to kill himself.
Yeah, I don't think that's out of the question. You also have the fact that he's got a passport, the false mustaches and stuff.
Sure.
I mean, cash. This is not, maybe he took them and then wanted to kill himself, but I think that it makes perfect sense that he would want to flee.
As far as
not that he's guilty.
A lot of people carry their passport as their ID with them. And then as far as money goes, $8,000 is not going to get you far in the world.
No, I think that – go ahead, Ed.
A couple of things. One, I just talked to Mike Rothmiller again. In fact, it's in the members section over at OppermanReport.com. But I just talked to Mike Rothmiller again, who is the intelligence officer for LAPD. And he told me that when there was 24-hour surveillance on OJ when he was out on bail. They knew where he was 24 hours a day. And,
really?
Oh, yeah. And the surveillance was pulled off of him right before he took off and hid. And he knows that for a fact. And so he describes too about how how they gave this Mexican cocaine drug lord free reign to do whatever he wanted. So, and that Daryl Gates was CIA, and how they blackmail celebrities and all stuff like that. They get caught on cases and they don't charge them, so they can blackmail them later on.
He was one of the worst people on the planet, Daryl Gates. Most of those race relation problems in L.A., you can thank Daryl Gates for.
Yeah, so that's the thing about
and Chief Parker.
The police surveillance was pulled on OJ before he took off in the Bronco chase. But the other thing too,
so someone connected to the Lucchese crime family might have people inside of a police organization that might be able to do things like that. Would you agree, Ed?
Oh yeah, well Gates had connections with high level cocaine dealers as well. To get a broader picture of this, you should go back and listen to the Mike Rothmiller interviews. I did two with him. One is live. It's up you can find it on YouTube and Spreaker and stuff like that. And the other one's in the members section. But then the other thing about Faye Resnick, another interesting character. What's his story about, I'll ask you that at the end. But if you notice, Faye Resnick has landed pretty well on her feet, from all this. For a woman who really, she didn't marry well, after this. And now supposedly she's some kind of an art dealer, and she has she's a very wealthy woman, as an art dealer.
I know why. I can tell you why and why she gets a lot of media attention too.
Okay, go ahead.
It comes down to, and this shouldn't surprise anyone, but we actually have it documented for once that during the whole trial, from the start, Bruce Jenner and Kris Kardashian immediately hired a full-time public relations firm to feed stories to the tabloids and the media. Most of them were paying for them throughout the whole trial. That explains, a lot as far as why the Kardashians are famous and why they get such a kid gloves treatment by the media. It's because she was essentially their big source for information that was published in the tabloids and in, people like Harvey Levin, who at the time was at KCBS, they had a full-time PR firm working it, and Faye was a very good friend of Chris. So, the gravy train's running. She's going to give a little bit to Faye.
Well, not only that, too, but, okay, it was told to me, okay, that, by the way, Faye Resnick, too, they're all related with Paris Hilton and Paris Hilton's sisters and cousins. And, they're all connected, this whole bunch. And I was told that if they had reality TV back around the time of the OJ trial, that Faye Resnick was the Paris Hilton of Beverly Hills and Hollywood. She was just like Paris Hilton, and she would have the same type of person, same type of personality, same type of following, the same kind of clique around her. And that if they had reality TV done back then, that Faye Resnick would have been the queen of reality TV, bigger than all these people put together. And you got to look at Paris Hilton when you look at when they found her. The guy cloned her cell phone and got her address book out of her cell phone. All she's got in there. All her contacts, and you can read the book, the articles by Mark Ebner.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Right. She got in there bail bondsmen, drug dealers, escort services. Okay. Yeah. So and then she's hanging around. Wait a minute, Paris Hilton. Who's she hanging around with, man? Joe Francis. Okay, on his private plane, they're flying around on his plane. This is before the Paris Hilton sex tapes come out, So they're all up to the same game over there.
Well, here's what Christian Reichardt said about the and it's related to the Paris thing because it's all about controlling the media in a lot of ways. Well, the information is that they had a full-time publicist working that was feeding information to the media, and in the weeks after the murder. If Kris Jenner and I had a conversation, all of a sudden, a few days later, I would read about those conversations in the magazines. And to me, the only way that it could have been brought forward to certain parts of the media is through her. So I have no dollar amounts. I've seen no canceled checks or something like that. But to me, it's rather obvious.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I've been playing the media forever. But let me ask you a question about Faye Resnick's father. Now, what's the story with him? Was he a plastic surgeon or some kind of a psychiatrist, a therapist? But he was a very, very wealthy, powerful man. And his information's pretty much been scrubbed off the internet. So what do you got on him?
Pierce?
I don't have anything other than that I've heard that he might have, the plastic surgery thing. But I have no. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes further back. I mean, all of these people's parents are nobody talks about.
Yeah.
I mean, like the Ronald Goldman. What's Fred Goldman doing, marrying Marvin Glass's wife while they're still married?
Marvin Glass, of course, the attorney in the Chicago outfit, the Chicago mob, who
was also in Los Angeles at the exact same time as the murders, after vowing to, get even with Fred Goldman. And I don't know if there's a lot into, with that, but it does also, again, it shows these people all ran in the same circles. Only in this sort of case would you have one of the principal victims. Well, his father is married to the former wife of one of the most powerful, cocaine traffickers / lawyers on the Eastern Seaboard. But I don't know much about Faye Resnick's father at all. I mean, she also, just for people that don't know, realize she is like a major star on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. She went directly into reality TV. And of course knew how to market everything. I mean, I think that's why she's making money too, is because she markets the case in the only way that the media want to hear about it. OJ's evil. He abused Nicole. And it's all him. Even though in Faye Resnick's book, Nicole Brown Simpson, the private diary of a life interrupted, she constantly disparages Nicole throughout. Saying that sex was her drug of choice, that Nicole was narcissistic, that she loved toying with OJ and making him go crazy, that she hated Paula Barbary. She was making money off of her dead friend within months.
Well, you mentioned the abuse and Faye's mentioning of the abuse. I just want to read a quote from the June 22nd, 1994, New York Times. The quote is from Denise Brown. She was not a battered woman, Miss Brown said. My definition of a battered woman is somebody who gets beat up all the time. I don't want people to think it was like that. I know Nicole. She was a very strong-willed person. If she was beaten up, she wouldn't have stayed with him. That wasn't her. Everybody knows about 1989. Does anybody know about any other time?
Well,
just to note that when Denise Brown testified, she apparently had some revelations that she herself had known about other times. So, just compare the two, compared to what she said in testimony and what she told the New York Times. Kind of weird.
Yeah, look at Denise Brown's wound up today, man. She's not in such great shape. Fraud, whether a charity fraud,
Ed, in terms of charity fraud, the Goldmans win the gold medal for that hands down.
Yeah.
And compared to the Nicole Brown Foundation, at least the Nicole Brown Foundation filed documents with the IRS that every foundation is required to do, and actually presented their revenue and documented the donations that they received, which was a plethora of donations. The Goldman family never documented to the IRS. They had their charity license suspended by the state of California as well as the IRS. They still go around purporting to run this foundation that doesn't exist even as a private business.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, and again, it's all supposedly because of your son. Really, I don't know what that quite says about the Goldmans.
The Goldmans have never put a scholarship or anything in Ron's name in memoriam. They never, took the plans for his restaurant that he had and opened one themselves in his memory. They've never done anything except raise money off of him.
Yeah, I know. And covered up any nasty things about Ron ever.
It's interesting because that right-wing radio show that he did in Arizona, that was one of those paid slots where he paid to get on the air. So
Fred Goldman did a radio show?
Oh, yeah. You guys didn't know that?
I didn't know that. No.
Oh, yeah. He still might be doing it, no?
I know he works at Nordstrom's.
Oh, really? Oh,
no, he does. He really does. He works in the men's suits department at Nordstrom's in Scarsdale. Not Scarsdale, Scottsboro.
Yeah, I think he sells mustache wax, too.
No, you really? Yeah. What is that, huh? It's like the turn of the century mustache.
Yeah.
Here's a little thing that I don't know that anyone knows, but I'll tell you guys today. You remember the purported phone call 5 days before the murders that quote-unquote Nicole made to the Sojourn Center, a domestic battered women's crisis hotline, right? Mm-hmm. You remember in the civil trial, there was testimony from the woman, Nancy Ney, who took the phone call and was adamant that this was the same Nicole that she was talking about. It was Nicole Brown Simpson because the famous husband was, of course, OJ Simpson, according to Nancy Ney, who received the phone call at the Sojourn Center. I can tell you guys that that is not the case. It was not Nicole Brown Simpson who called the Sojourn Center that day. It was a woman named Nicole married to another famous domestic abuser.
And who is that?
Nicole Rothschild, who was married to Dudley Moore.
Really? How did you piece this together?
I heard that story. I heard that too. Yeah.
It comes from it's one of the few things I don't have documented, but it comes from a source that is impeccable as far as credibility. It was Nicole Rothschild, Dudley Moore's ex-wife, who Dudley Moore, of course, was arrested and convicted of battering her. Mm.
Well, and again, quickly on the abuse, yes, did OJ beat up Nicole at least once? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And he admitted to it. But, well, we're coming up on the break. We will continue more with Brian Heiss and Ed Opperman.
mostly narcotics.
Freedom.
Oh, yes, I like very much.
Radio.
You're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.
Did you know there are 3 million edible food plants on Earth, and none have the nutritional value of the hemp plant? HempUSA.org offers you hemp protein powder. It does not contain chemicals or THC, is non-GMO, and is 100% gluten-free. Hemp protein powder burns fat, builds muscle, contains 53% protein, and feeds the body the nutrients it needs. Call 888-910-4367 and see what our powder, seeds, and oil can do for you. Only at HempUSA.org. HempUSA.org introduces 3 brand new detox formulations of microplant powder. Brain Fuel for depression, bipolar disorders, and stress. Total Care, anti-cancer agent that cleans the liver and organs and increases memory. Rejuvenate, invigorates and heals the body, mind, and spirit. These products are your alternative to pharmaceuticals. Call 888-910-4367 and like us on Facebook. We ship worldwide. Only at HempUSA.org.
This is Rick Simpson, and you're listening to American Freedom Radio.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the war in the Persian Gulf. Do you know my favorite part of that war? It's the first war we ever had that was on every channel plus cable. We like war. We're a warlike people. We like war because we're good at it. And you know why we're good at it? Because we get a lot of practice. This country's only 200 years old, and already we've had 10 major wars. We average a major war every 20 years in this country, so we're good at it. And it's a good thing we are. We're not very good at anything else anymore. Huh? Can't build a decent car. Got no steel industry left. Can't educate our young people. Can't get health care to our old people. And you probably noticed I don't feel about that war the way we were told we were supposed to feel about that war, the way we were ordered and instructed by the United States government to feel about that war. You see, I tell you, my mind doesn't work that way. I got this real moron thing I do. It's called thinking. And I'm not a very good American because I like to form my own opinions. I don't just roll over when I'm told to. Sad to say, most Americans just roll over on command. Not me. I have certain rules I live by. My first rule, I don't believe anything the government tells me. Nothing. Zero. Nope. And I don't take very seriously the media or the press in this country, who in the case of the Persian Gulf War were nothing more than unpaid employees of the Department of Defense, and who most of the time function as kind of an unofficial public relations agency for the United States government. So I don't listen to them. I don't get all choked up about yellow ribbons and American flags. I consider them to be symbols, and I leave symbols to the symbol-minded.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow. Friendships to flourish with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio@ymail.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs and artillery batteries not included.
No rules, no rules, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, We are American Freedom Radio, American Freedom Radio. Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything. Geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to Porkins Policy Radio. I am your host, Pierce Redmond. If you're just joining us right now, we are joined by Brian Heiss and Ed Opperman, and we are discussing all things OJ today, getting into different theories and all sorts of little angles and tidbits. And I know I was finishing up a thought just before the break, and I just wanted to, and then we could just sort of put a pin in that, all that talk about that, but about the domestic abuse, just to say that when Nicole was going through divorce proceedings, she never mentioned any other physical incidents of physical abuse, and she very well could have. There's nothing holding her back.
And that's key, because immediately following the 1989 incident that everyone knows about, OJ had his document prepared by his lawyer, Skip Taft, that said very explicitly that if there's ever any physical abuse between he and Nicole, again, that the prenup is null and void.
Yes. Yeah. And also, too, I mean, and this is all documented, Darden and Clark, they would not bring in a domestic abuse expert because they were terrified of what they would say. And at the time, Scheck and Neufeld had both done a lot of work in domestic abuse, and they were ready to get a whole slew of experts saying that OJ is not the type of domestic abuser who then decapitates his wife. So just that, and again, that's part of the false narrative that's put out there. That's constantly.
I think the victim's own words speak for herself. In the surreptitious recording that a detective who responded to the 1993 911 call, the famous one that people will remember because he's OJ Simpson, I think you know his record. That's the kind of the takeaway line. One of the officers there had his recorder going, and on that recording, which was played at the civil trial, Nicole emphatically states, he has not hit me since that thing 4 years ago, which would have been 1989. Mm-hmm. That's what in her own voice says. He has not hit me since that thing 4 years ago.
And even that was mostly hitting the car, right?
Car was 1985 or 88.
Yeah, that was a separate one.
Okay.
And I think that's the one where Fuhrman showed up, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then OJ drove away. And of course, I mean, the LAPD treated him pretty nice. I was actually going to say, going all the way back, we were talking earlier about, Ed, you were saying that OJ was under 24-hour surveillance and that they stopped, and then him and AC escaped. And there is an idea that, maybe what if, if Ippolito or someone within his organization, they had friends within the LAPD, maybe they allowed for that. The other thing too is, what if the LAPD what if there were people within that knew full well what was going on and that they were involved? I mean, it's only a few years after the trial you get the Rampart scandal. So again, I mean, you're talking about LAPD officers selling coke, planting coke disappearing from evidence lockers, over 1,000 people set up in phony drug busts. So, it's not inconceivable that there were just some people at the LAPD that knew what was going on, that maybe were all in the same, payroll or knew the same people and said, all right, hey, drop the tail for however long, and so that he maybe has a shot to just get out of here.
Yeah.
So that was all I was going to say.
As far as the LAPD covering up coke, it goes way bigger than that. Because if you listen to the Mike Rothmiller interview, he talks about this cocaine kingpin who was a general down in Mexico, who was trying to launder $250 million. He was trying to get Mike to launder the $250 million for him. And I told him he was crazy for not doing it. Then it turns out that his partner met with the guy down in Puerto Rico and he's getting off the plane. But this guy had an active FBI warrant, nationwide warrant, all the United States, and they had a sealed indictment. And he came and went, do whatever he wanted. They let him go, complete immunity, do whatever he wanted. And then I just had Freeway Rick Ross. I just talked to Rick Ross all day. I've been talking all week, but we just talked all day on Saturday on American Freedom Radio. And same thing. The guy, the Nicaraguan Contra that he was getting all his coke from, only did 24 months. They caught him with, I think it was like 10,000 kilos of cocaine was his participation in the deal. So yeah, so the idea that they these coke smugglers and importers and traffickers at that level could make a phone call to Daryl Gates and get this thing shut down is obviously possible.
Oh yeah, and again too, I mean I think I asked you about this, Ed, but so there is this supposedly, or there's a sworn affidavit that Donald Freed and Raymond P. Briggs got when they were writing Killing Time. And this is May 22nd, 1996. And it was an informant that swore to them in an affidavit that OJ was suspected by a narcotics kingpin of having informed on him. And in order to escape from the unrelenting pressure to keep buying and selling drugs, he ratted him out. Then the kingpin was arrested, sentenced to 10 years in prison, and then he somehow got out of prison and ordered the murder of Nicole, and is still at large. Now, again, this falls in line with Ippolito getting busted, and then walking away from a work detail. And as far as I know, I'm not sure if he's actually ever been caught.
He got out
I might be totally wrong.
He got out in 2007. He spent 10 years in prison. He was rearrested in New Jersey in 1998. Okay. And he was one of his charges was, of course, escaping prison.
Right. Okay. So again, that fits in with this timeline and whatnot, and again with the possible reason for OJ getting in the Bronco and driving away.
Frankly, it's not our theory; it's Chris Darden's theory. We've just built upon it, and there are I was thinking about it during the break. If you think that he wasn't fleeing, he was going to go commit suicide, and I've always argued his intentions were going to commit suicide. If you had to weigh the evidence of both, there's a whole lot more evidence for your thought, Pierce, than mine.
And also too, when did I lose you, Ed?
No, I'm here. Oh, no, I just want to give a quick shout out.
Go ahead.
To Ted Rubenstein, okay? Because Ted Rubenstein, you got to remember, he worked with May Brussel, Larry Flint,
sure.
Dave Emery. So, the guy's a legend. So, and he called in because he's listening to the show right now, and he tells me that the Trump helicopter pilot, Joseph Weisbaum, who was also convicted of coke, and then he got a really sweetheart deal to get an apartment over at Trump Towers. And Trump, and by the way, too, one of the reasons he didn't get convicted, this Weisbaum character, is because he wound up, they transferred his federal cocaine case to the judge that was Trump's sister. Okay? And then she took herself off the case. Right. But she went and told everybody, I know this guy, I fly in his helicopter every week.
He's okay.
Yeah, he's like, give him. And then the guy walks away, got off that deal. But he's also connected up to this Donald Soffer character and Turnpike Island. Okay? And, it was one more thing I was going to bring up. I forget, and Trump has an OJ connection too.
Well, he was at his wedding, and they were friends. Yeah.
So.
And he used to go. Faye Resnick talks about him in Aspen. Whenever they would go up to Aspen, and Trump, one of the occasions, Trump, wouldn't stop talking to this. I think she referred to her as a big-titted bimbo. The whole time. And then also, too, we were mentioning
you can't deny the man being accurate.
And then we were talking off the air, too. Trump's, the lawyer representing Trump University is Dan Petrocelli, who was the main lawyer in the civil trial.
I hate him.
So, it deeply, it wouldn't surprise me at all. They're all connected.
Yeah.
But as much as I try to resist the giving into the idea that he was either being said we'll take you away to a non-extradition country or whatnot. All of just the things that Darden brings out with the Reeds and all of the connections between Ippolito, Soffer, And, why does a guy from New Jersey, who mainly is in California, have his boat that he primarily uses at the Turnberry Marina that's owned by Donald Soffer, and who was OJ's, who OJ had, OJ was the best man at his wedding. It's just, you can see how it makes a lot of sense. And to go from, the east coast of Mexico to the Bahamas in a cigarette boat, maybe, isn't the hardest thing to do to get somewhere pretty fast.
Also, this doesn't necessarily have to mean we're obviously speculating right now, but this doesn't have to mean, we're going to give you your freedom, you're going to live your life out on a little island somewhere in the Bahamas if you keep your mouth shut. I don't think everything about OJ's character doesn't seem to point towards him abandoning his entire life there. And you were saying before, $8,000 isn't that much in cash, right? He could have simply been going there to negotiate something, some sort of a deal. Listen, I will keep my mouth shut. We'll do this. We'll do that. I will do everything I can to, and ultimately he has refused to, pursue any angle, dealing with drugs. Even when and they'll kind of come right up to the water's edge with that, but not get their feet wet. So he has kind of kept up his deal until very recently. He had more or less, kept up his deal and kept his mouth shut and was, I think, obviously getting kind of various fair treatment. I mean, because there was the drug bust in Florida. Well, right, where he had like there was garbage bag of ecstasy.
No, there was no drugs found in the house.
That's right. Okay.
There was a federal raid on OJ's house, right. A suspected ecstasy ring. There was no drugs, not even a pot joint in a marijuana cigarette in the house. There was nothing in the house. They found nothing.
Oh, was it a legal DirecTV or something?
Cable TV, yeah, he had a cable. Yeah. But no,
I'm surprised he didn't go to jail for that.
Well, it's time they cracked down. But, he did just recently, he told Jeffrey Felix, who wrote the book Guarding the Juice, who was OJ's prison guard. You guys should both talk to him, by the way. He's a very talkative guy. And there's a ton of stuff you can get at him that he's never talked to anybody before. I think I did the first interview with him. And he said that OJ told him he had 2 drug dealers showed up at my door, knocked them in. They wanted me to pay off Nicole's bill. And I had paid her off many, many times before. That night I didn't. And they went over there. And then that's the next thing you know. And Felix thinks that OJ followed them over there, and which is
it's the one part, and I thought he was great. I thought your interview with him was fantastic. I didn't expect to like Jeffrey Felix. I didn't expect to believe Jeffrey Felix. I thought he was just going to be another one of these, let me make money off of OJ and by spreading all this stuff, but he didn't do that. The one area that I disagree on him, I can't put OJ at the scene, period. The timeline doesn't fit. It's literally impossible for him to be at the scene. And I don't think, knowing how much he loved that woman, I don't think he could have kept his composure up if he saw her, with her head almost lopped off. And I don't think that his answers in that police interview would have came out in the pitch, the tone, the speed, and the speed of response that it did if he knew that her head had almost been lopped off.
Well, that's interesting. Well, what do you make of the theory that Pelicano was there that night and saw the whole thing?
I don't know. I think I've asked Pierce about Pelicano. I know I've asked Steve Singular about Pelicano, and I don't know too much about Pelicano. I know the Reader's Digest version. I mean, the answer is I don't know. He's never come into my world.
I just want to make.
I think it's possible. But I don't know. That seems almost like a little bit too much for Pelicano. Maybe I'm not giving him enough credit.
No, but Ed,
he seems much more like
Ed, you've talked about the surveillance that Pelicano had operating way back before we even knew the technology was there in 1994.
Yeah. Also, but I just want to back up a bit to back to Jeffrey Felix and the book Guarding the Juice. Because his co-author on that book is a friend of mine, Corey Leviton, who's also been on my show. He's a local Vegas guy here, who's an extremely ethical kind of guy. He's like one of these little nerdy kind, and I hate to call him like that. he's a really ethical kind of guy. Like he'd verify everything that he would put in the book. If his name was on the book, I can tell you that for a fact. So I really take my hat off to that guy, Jeffrey Felix, in guarding the Jews.
I mean, one thing that's a great credit to both you and
I thought he was great.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say one of the things that was a great credit to both you, Ed, and Pierce is that you both only put on people who have very good documentation of what they're going to present. You know, it's not this fast and loose with, all of this drivel that's out there. You guys do a good job about choosing people to talk about topics that, it's not the bullcrap that you get on so many other places of, rumor and innuendo. So thank you both for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Makes it a lot easier. It makes it a lot easier to listen to.
Well, there's enough real stuff to report on without going on making stuff up. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff out there you can talk about. So.
Oh, we spent almost an hour and a half barely scratching the surface. Yeah. Talking about all this stuff. On that note of people that are less than credible, and I also we should just address that. I got a question in the chat room from Jenny asking. Her question is, is why do you think there's so much reluctance from the mainstream media and even a lot of the alternative media to deviate from the official narrative when there is so much compelling evidence against it? And this is, I'll open it up to you guys in a minute, but I was just going to say, because the mainstream media, they just know, you're not going to last talking about cocaine trafficking, Joey Ippolito, and all of these shady characters, and they just know that that's not going to sell. The alternative media, I think, and I hate saying it, but I think by and large, a lot of them just assume he's, big scary black guy, so he had to have done it. And I think that, unfortunately, it boils down to a lot of that. It's really just a simple matter of, well, he had to have done it, when
you've been told something over and over, the same story over and over and over for 21 years, 22 years, and then, all the other information is out there. All the things that are actually in evidence is out there, but people don't do that. They stick to this narrative that was developed, the narrative that frankly was developed before OJ's plane even landed coming back from Chicago. They already were presenting him as the man who did it. And LAPD went all in once Fuhrman, quote unquote, found the glove behind Cato's bungalow. And, they were tied to the case now. They couldn't deviate at that point. Once Fuhrman found out that OJ was there the night before up until a time, and he realized that he could put what I believe was in the Bronco at that point, put that behind Cato's bungalow, where the quote-unquote thumps came from, the LAPD was locked in. When I read Lang and Van Adder's book, Detectives Lang and Van Adder, who were the lead detectives on the case, and they agreed with my timeline, which puts the murders occurring after 10:30 p.m., I came to the realization they knew he was innocent.
Oh, sure. And I think at that point this is after Fuhrman might have already been to Rockingham at least once in the middle of the night. All of the, again, Fuhrman is alone for almost all of the important moments of the initial hours of the investigation. Yeah, I'm sure that they had some inkling as to what really went on, but they knew that, well, okay, now this is the case.
People will swear up and down that there was only one glove at Bundy because 20 LAPD officers are prepared to testify that there was only one glove at Bundy. You know what? 20 LAPD officers were also prepared to testify that famous picture of Mark Fuhrman pointing at the bloody glove at Bundy, with the blood around it by the gate, they were prepared to testify that picture occurred at 7 a.m. in the morning when the actual negatives of the photo show that the picture was taken at about 4:30 in the morning at night before Fuhrman even went to the Rockingham estate.
Yeah.
So if they're willing to lie about, and it's a lie, period, it's proven through the order the pictures were taken and the sun not being out tends to prove that it took place at night. If they're going to lie about that, why wouldn't they lie about there only being one glove or two gloves there?
Yeah. Oh, and again, this after Fuhrman refers to the gloves as them. And I mean, we don't have to, I don't want to spend too much more time. I feel like I've talked about the gloves.
If you were to ask anyone today who was alive during the time, who was the Olympic Park bomber, they would answer you Richard Jewell, when it was Eric Rudolph. But it's instilled in people's minds because it's the first message that they received. It's the first presentation of the story of what happened, and that's what people remember. Psychological studies have proven this.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, too, I mean, that's the going back to before we were talking about, well, did OJ and AC actually even go to Nicole's grave? I don't know if there's anyone we saw them there. Now, they might have said that, but did that actually happen? Or is that what is...
According to Jennifer Peace, that's the story that they concocted after they realized that they couldn't get across the border. Keep in mind, they were also...
But it's in the FX show.
Yeah, well, just because it's in the FX show doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah.
But you're right, because it's presented that way and it's been presented that way for 20 years. People just accept it. And I think that a lot of the people who were Simpson's staunch defenders were put in a position that, they were ostracized for telling the truth, for saying this guy didn't do it. And it just became so much harder on them in their professional lives to go forward with that narrative that they either stopped talking about it or, for example, Carl Douglas in the ESPN film, he was a little more wishy-washy than I've seen him in the past. Mm-hmm. And that was just funny because I know Carl Douglas fully believes that OJ had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
The actual murders.
Yeah.
But I think that as a society, and I think that's why Kardashian said what he said as well, because they were put in a position that a lot of their friends abandoned them because, they believed the propaganda that was put out to them over and over for over a year. And they didn't want to associate with people who were on the side of OJ. He was the bad guy. He was evil. And I think that's why there haven't been a lot of challenges. And frankly, I don't want to say besides Steve Singular's work, most of the other things that challenged the narrative, there are gaping holes in them. Mm-hmm. A lot of good information, but some of them just, huge gaping holes that, you could just write aliens did it and it would just serve the same purpose as the gaping hole. Mm. But I think that there's a lot of,
you know what it is too? I think a lot of the alternative narratives attempt to again tiptoe around some of the more nefarious things going. So it was Glenn Rogers. It was a serial killer that may or may not have been in that area, who may or may not have even had any contact with Nicole. It's all basically innuendo and people alleging that they saw something that would, evidence. Oh, but we can't find it now.
Or my favorite on the Glenn Rogers. Well, there's a picture of them together at a club the night before that no one's ever seen.
Yeah, or a receipt that disappeared from her house.
But Glenn Rogers has confessed. I've seen the note. I have a handwritten note from Glenn Rogers saying he confessed. Have you guys seen that?
I know he confessed. Yeah, I know he confessed, but I guess I just it's not uncommon for serial killers to do that. To get whatever kind of attention that they can get. There's also, there's a lot of evidence that he. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I mean, there's evidence even of some of the women that he killed in the past that he didn't really kill as many as he said, that he was taking credit for other things. You know, he might have had an accomplice. And there's, I just don't, the Glenn Rogers thing again just seems like a cop-out so then all of the other weird shenanigans going on, that's irrelevant. I guess that was just all coincidence. That every single one of these people had a connection to, cocaine trafficking. That, Fuhrman and all that stuff. Oh, that's just, I guess it really is just, then it's sort of like, well, then Fuhrman is fine. Yeah, he was racist, but, whatever. You know, it doesn't really matter.
He beat up minorities and arrested them and,
or talked about
brutalized them.
Evidence.
Let's have him on to address these racial problems that we're having down in Charlotte, coming up next on Fox News.
I think the Glenn Rogers thing is it's also a way of kind of making OJ seem like the angel, which I know a lot of people tend to, if he's innocent, then it must mean that he's good or something.
Why does the Glenn Rogers thing get attention? Because OJ stuff, except apparently my film, OJ stuff sells. It gets ratings. It gets people watch OJ stuff, and they. As long as you're telling the right story, it's not hard to get on the Reels channel, your show on the Reels channel, your film on the Reels channel, except if it's about the Fuhrman tapes. They apparently don't care about that. But OJ sells. And the more you can tell these stories that really don't upset people, don't rock the boat about it, they'll put it on because it's going to get ratings in a world that it becomes tougher and tougher to get ratings. I mean, I think it's that simple. And as far as Glenn Rogers confessing, do you guys remember that nut job, John Mark Carr, who confessed to the John Bonet thing? People will confess to a lot of things, especially in a world that people put their food up on Instagram and think that they should, that's important for people to see. It's we live in a world that there's such a thing called a YouTube celebrity. I'm against the death penalty. However, I tend to not hold that belief when it comes to YouTube celebrities. I wouldn't be annoyed if they were summarily executed, but that's just me.
Hey, wait, the little tidbit about John Mark Carr, since you brought it up. Okay. I'm the guy who found, when John Mark Carr, when his name first became public, I'm the guy who found all his Usenet posts, and I sent them over to CNN. Yeah. I was in the middle of something else. I forget when I was in the middle of something else. It was taking all my time, and I didn't have any time to promote myself through it, but it was on TV the same day. I sent it to everyone. That's how it got all. And the guy was an incredible pervert. I don't want to get too distracted, but this guy used to have, he had an organization on Usenet to get little girls he would counsel little girls if they were lonely and had problems and stuff. But
how many little girls used Usenet, first of all?
Well, no, enough that he got responses. That we had a lot of followers on it too.
And second of all, you're mentally ill when you're posting things like that on a public forum.
Well, there was a lot of stuff. In fact, one of the West Memphis 3 supporters was doing the same exact thing. One of the guys you see in the documentaries. But another question I have for you guys too is back to this Rogers. This confession that I've seen. Now, have you guys seen that? Is that something that's circulated, or was that just sent to me? Because I got that. Yeah, because I've got that from T.H. Johnson, and I know he's corresponding with Rogers.
It's in that Aphrodite Jones investigations discovery show that she did about. They have the whole note there, and the awful woman.
I think it's in the documentary too. The full the feature film.
Okay.
About Rogers.
Yeah. It's out there.
Yeah, I think that's actually the one and I love T.H. Johnson's work, but he has a weird soft spot for OJ. And he only mentions it towards the very end of Pursuit of Exhibit 36. That maybe OJ might have known something about drugs. And that maybe that might possibly be why he's he will rarely ever touch that. So I think for him, he found Glenn Rogers as a way of it's a way of just sort of OJ's innocent and this is who did it. And, and to sort of, maybe, I don't know. I mean, that's my own interpretation, and I don't mean any disrespect, because I think he's great, and I've used a lot of his research in my own research, but I do think he gets a little carried away with the Glenn Rogers. I just don't really buy it, and it's just sort of, it just seems sort of too out there for me. I know there's the theory about that this was like a right-wing hit job, and that makes more sense to me than Glenn Rogers.
Hi, OJ was a Republican.
Oh, was he?
Yes.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I'm sure he was rich and, and
he didn't like Clinton when he played golf with him. He liked him after they played golf, but he didn't like him beforehand. He didn't vote for him. He was friends with Nixon. OJ was.
Well, I know that. Well, there's a whole theory that this was really like right wing in terms of like the order, like neo Nazis. That this was a planned hit.
I think that a lot of the different the Glenn Rogers or whatnot. What they do is they serve to allow us to take that turn away from confronting, the really issues at the heart of the murders or the aftermath of the murders, the Fuhrmans, the issues of race in America.
Oh, okay.
Danny first.
All right, so sorry, feel a little technical difficulties, but that is to be expected when we're talking about OJ Simpson. And I actually don't remember who was talking when that happened. I think it was you, Brian, right?
Yeah, I was babbling.
Yeah. Well, okay, all right. Well, you know what? That's a good enough place to just sort of to end that part. And I kind of wanted to just finish off on a couple little just things that piss me off to no end. And that's some of these little factoids that spread like wildfire throughout the internet and, particularly the mainstream. And I know that they are like a big part of the ESPN documentary, and that is this little turd called Mike Gilbert, who purports himself to be OJ Simpson's sports agent. And he also seems to be the only person on the planet that has all of the inside dish on everything that is going on behind the scenes in terms of OJ. So this is the guy that claims that OJ told him that he did it, when they were having Rolling Rocks outside on the pool. Gilbert is the guy who claims that he persuaded OJ to stop taking his arthritis medication. And Brian, I remember I brought that up to you because I had this happen. All my friends say, oh well, but the glove doesn't matter because he didn't have his arthritis medicine. Because I saw that in the ESPN documentary, and you pulled up instantly when I emailed that to you a whole a transcript from the trial where Johnny Cochran says, I don't know why this is being spoken about, but it's totally not true. And he says, we have the doctor from the LA County jails saying that he's still taking it.
I'll read exactly what Johnny Cochran said to Judge Ito in open court. Your Honor, yesterday, and I guess a couple of days ago, there was a statement made by Mr. Darden at the sidebar regarding Mr. Simpson not taking some medication. That statement was false. Since that time, we have had occasion to have Sean Chapman of my office contact Dr. Johnson at the LA County jail. And Mr. Simpson has, on every occasion, taken his medication. And the medical records at the jail verify that fact. I felt compelled as an officer of the court to indicate what the records indicate. What my client has also indicated. That he takes his medicine every day and that he has never at any time not taken his medicine for his rheumatoid arthritis. I can't pronounce that word. Johnny didn't say that. He was able to pronounce that word. I am not. I think it's called, and the records at the jail so indicate that. End of story.
Right, exactly. So, and I'm not sure. Again, it seems like that's just one of these. The glove not fitting was so shocking to everybody that thought he was guilty. And that, raises crap, am I totally wrong on this? And then, of course, we say, oh, well, it must have just been the blood on the glove that made it shrink. And
but
then,
they've actually done scientific tests to prove that, and it's actually in testimony from the guy from the isotoner, Eris isotoner, the product VP testified that 3 cc's of blood would have no effect on making the glove shrink.
Right. Oh, yeah, no. The
direct testimony.
Yeah. Well, I know exactly. And then that sort of becomes a thing. So then, okay, it has to be something else. Oh, it's the arthritis medicine. Okay, he stopped taking it, even though that's, again, and this is Mike Gilbert saying this, what, a decade later or so?
He started saying it when he was given a book deal with he has a co-author for his book,
Farber,
and
something.
Yeah, Celia Farber, who also denies the existence of AIDS. So he's running with the cool
I know, which
crowd.
is so funny. I know so many people would point to him as the mainstream people point to him as some sort of great, and then it's like
is a documented pathological liar, drug addict. And he was not sure if we consider the guy that sets you up for autograph shows to be your sports agent, he had no involvement with any contract that OJ had with NBC, the Bills, the 49ers, anything. He set up OJ to do autograph shows, period. That was his role. He had no further role than setting up OJ to do autograph shows. He, he has that drug addiction that he battled, and which is part of the reason why he, started selling out OJ with these things that can be so easily documented by just looking at things that are actually on the record in testimony that disprove Mike Gilbert's statements, but people go with it because we live in a world that, rather than spend 5 minutes on Google to prove that that statement is in fact a lie, we could just go with it.
Mm. And I think, go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, with that whole memorabilia crowd, those guys, half of that stuff is fake. The autographs are fake. They're all peddling fake stuff. It's a really unethical racket those guys are running.
I think Mike Gilbert was also involved in the what happened in Las Vegas too, right?
The hotel, yeah.
Gilbert had storage lockers that he apparently had let lapse his payments on them, which is shocking that someone that uses drugs would have such crappy financial management. But, I guess it happens occasionally. He let the payments lapse, and it was like one of the Storage Wars deals, and these guys got a hold of the stuff in those lockers, and what happened in Vegas happened because he was basically set up by Tom Riccio. Although everyone forgets that it's documented that OJ actually contacted the FBI to ask them about if it was legal to do what he was doing. But I think that when they brought the gun in the room, that kind of voided that as being legal.
Yeah, I don't know. Some of the people intimately involved with the Vegas heist are convinced that that lawyer, who's the lawyer that was the last lawyer?
The lady, or are you talking about his whatchamacallit?
The one who handled that trial. But anyway,
I can picture him. Why am I forgetting his name?
That he was the guy who was down there brokering that deal for the sale of that suit, and he was waiting down in an SUV in the parking lot of the Palace Station down there.
But the suit wasn't even there.
Well, he was expecting it though, and that's what they went for. They were expecting that suit.
Yeah, they were expecting that suit, but he basically stole a bunch of pictures of his children, his daughter who had tragically died in a swimming pool accident. She drowned. And they took Joe Montana lithographs that they gave back. They took a phone that they gave back immediately before they even left the hotel. But the stuff he stole does, if that merits 33 years in prison, that's just that Judge Glass is, she represents everything that is not good.
Mm. I think too that was also that was just the end of the road for it. He had used up all of his 9 lives previously, and I think he just couldn't get out of that. And I think somebody that didn't want to see him around was happy to do that. I mean, why even set him up?
I mean, it comes down to public opinion, because how do you lose 9 lives when you've never been convicted of anything? You've been held.
Well,
he's responsible.
Yeah. But I mean, nobody believed. The majority of people believed that he was guilty. It didn't matter. I mean, that's a whole problem too. Is that obviously Cochran and Douglas didn't really care about convincing the public that he didn't do it. All they really, they didn't even care about convincing the public that there was, all of this other stuff going on. They were just like Douglas told Stephen Singular, if I get one black person on that jury, it's over. That's all they cared about. So, I mean, ultimately, in everybody's mind.
I tend to think they actually cared about more than that, but we'll agree to disagree on that. But as far as proving if he did it, if anyone out there wants to see a well-documented presentation of, it would literally be impossible that OJ did it, and I would love you to disprove it, too. It's a magazine, we'll call it. If you go to http tiny-cc/12June1994, you can have that magazine to read and see what you think after reading just a very well-documented, complete with citations, those facts, and have a better idea of what we're talking about in terms of it would be impossible for OJ to have done it. Again, it's tiny.cc/12June1994.
Well, and I mean, we should say too, I mean, the defense's job is not to solve the crime.
Douglas says that it was the way the public perceived the 911 tapes and the domestic violence testimony that made it impossible for him to fully rehabilitate OJ in the public's image.
Yeah, I think that. I would agree. I think that I think also coupled with the fact that he's black too. I mean, let's not nobody really Johnny Depp. Look at him. But nobody is banning him or anything. He's still going to be a hot commodity, even if he was beating Amber Rose more times than OJ was.
And that speaks volumes to the way that the media picks and chooses who they're going to hold accountable for domestic violence and who are they going to give a free pass for. If you go to my Vimeo, vimeo.com/Brian Heiss, Heiss. I have a film up there, 100 celebrities arrested for domestic abuse. You will be shocked to see some of the faces that pop up and some of the names that pop up that have been arrested for domestic abuse that have gotten a free pass from the media. Why do we take people like Ray Rice and OJ Simpson and treat them like pariahs, which I believe we rightly treat them like pariahs for, and if you hit your partner, you are piece of crap in that context, and you shouldn't be given that celebrity treatment anymore. However, you have Sean Penn, Mel Gibson, 98 others that are very well-known people that have been given a free pass, and you have to wonder why.
Well, you'd be surprised how many of your friends and coworkers and neighbors have been arrested for domestic violence. And in family court, it's like 60-70% of the couples in family court that is domestic violence arrest. It's insane. And also, too, another thing I always find interesting, too, is that OJ changed the domestic violence laws throughout the country. Mm-hmm. Every little county went and made all these draconian domestic violence laws. Just if the police show up, someone's getting arrested just from a phone call, And but they went back to OJ's house another 10 times, and he never got arrested again once. With Christine Prody, they were fighting like cats and dogs 24 hours a day. And by the way, has anyone here been in touch with Christine Prody lately?
No, I've never have.
Okay.
And can I ask you, why is there not whether it's run by the state or the county, a publicly accessible for free database that you could pull up and get someone's arrest history or the court records from, let's say you read a story in the paper. I live in Chicago. I live in Cook County, Illinois. And, you read in the Chicago Tribune about someone getting arrested for doing something horrible. And then you want to follow up and, you remember the name. there's no database of places that you can go to check online to see if that person was convicted, if they were acquitted. You just know that story that was put out in the media. Or, you can't look at people's arrest records. There's no database that you can access that information unless you hire someone like yourself, Ed, to do it for you.
Yeah, there's databases, but you have to have a license. But then also, too, there's like Pacers and stuff like that. There's all kind of court that you can pull up stuff. And there's companies, too, that will pull court docs for you locally really cheap,
But why shouldn't that be as accessible as, let's say, the Megan's Law? Why should you not be able to know that someone that you might date is someone that beat their last girlfriend the same way that you would know that someone was arrested for or convicted of child pornography or child molestation? Yeah.
Well, in Florida, they have that Sunshine State law. You can get a lot of stuff down in Florida. But most states, there's no demand for that, because most people, so many people have DUIs and domestic violence cases. They're the last people I don't want, they're not going to vote for that. Everyone's going to vote against that.
Well, we're just talking about that, but Christopher Darden was believed to have been a domestic abuser.
According to, and the man that published it, and he was never sued by Darden, so that's something that we could hold him for. Mr. Schatzman said that he regularly beat his live-in girlfriends who also work for the district attorney's office, according to 8 people that Schatzman talked to at the LA County District Attorney's office.
Yeah, and again, it's like, well, I mean, it's almost like one of those, like, it's horrible that if he was doing this, but you bring that up to people. You bring that up to the diehard, no J people, and it's like, no, I don't care, or I don't believe it, or it doesn't matter. It's okay if Christopher Darden did it, It's just the way that people, again, are so manipulated by, which is not to say that, like, not to say that Chris Darden is going to cut the head off of his current wife,
Ed, but if someone or Pierce, if someone published in a book that you beat your significant other regularly, and you didn't do it, would you file a defamation lawsuit against that person, or at least libel lawsuit?
I wouldn't, but Darden probably would because he's a lawyer. It's easy for him.
but he never did.
Yeah. Well, also too, I don't know if it was on the air or off the air, but you got to hear some of the stuff that T.H. Johnson has to say about Chris Darden, with his baby mamas and all the stuff going on over there. Yeah, the guy's a very.
Well, I mean, it was Johnny Cochran had domestic abuse stuff too. I mean, when there are all sorts of allegations against him as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, they're all domestic abuse is unacceptable. Period. And we all agree on that. But the question is, why aren't the people that we've just mentioned held accountable the same way that we hold an OJ or a Ray Rice?
Right. Well, yeah, and I think that's almost entirely around race and stature. And that's also too is just the lesson of how far OJ fell. I mean, from this sort of the darling of the white world.
He was the most beloved black man in America. On June 12th, 1994, before the murders occurred, you could make an argument that he was the most beloved black man in America.
Yeah.
As far as liked across demographics, he had the highest Q rating out of almost any celebrity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. And now you look at him and he's, going to probably rot in prison for the rest of his life. For something that he really, really was probably innocent of.
Well, he was an idiot for having them bring a gun to the event to get his stuff back, but he doesn't deserve 33 years for that.
Yeah.
Joey Ippolito escaped prison. He only got 10 years along with the sentence that he was still serving under when he was escaped. He only got 10 years, period. But this guy who took some stuff gets 33 years.
Well, I think all the guys that were with OJ that night are out by now.
None of them. They all cut deals, and the gentleman that